My name is Leo Nash, and I learned the hard way that some people will do anything for money. Even the people you call family. I was 32 years old when my father died. George Nash built his logistics company from nothing. A single truck, a single route, and a willingness to work harder than anyone else. By the time he retired, Nash Logistics was worth over $6 million. He worked 60-hour weeks for 40 years, and he never forgot where he came from. He started with nothing. His parents were immigrants who worked in a factory. He put himself through night school while driving a delivery truck during the day. When he had saved enough, he bought his own truck. Then another. Then a warehouse. Then a fleet. He built it all from the ground up, deal by deal, mile by mile. I grew up riding in that first truck with him. Saturday mornings, I would sit in the passenger seat while he made his deliveries. The cab smelled like coffee and diesel. He would point out buildings and tell me who owned them and how they got started. Every building had a story. Every business had a founder. Every founder had a journey. He taught me to see the world in terms of people who built things and people who took things. He made sure I knew which category he wanted me to be in. I learned most of my early lessons in the cab of that truck. One Saturday morning, we stopped at a red light and he pointed at a hardware store on the corner. See that place? Bill Morrison opened it in 1978 with $5,000 he saved over 7 years. He painted the walls himself. He stocked the shelves himself. For 2 years, he worked the register alone. 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. He turned to look at me. That is what it takes. You do not wait for someone to give you something. You build it yourself. Another Saturday, he pulled a crumpled 20 from his wallet while we ate breakfast at a diner. He laid it flat on the table. This is a tool, he said. It buys you food, shelter, and warmth. Everything beyond that is a choice. Some people spend it to impress people they do not like. Some people save it to protect people they love. The difference is everything. He folded the bill and put it away. I have thought about that lesson every time I have made a financial decision since. He also taught me to read people. He would nod at customers walking into stores and tell me which ones were owners and which ones were employees, just by the way they carried themselves. Owners walk like they belong, he said. Employees walk like they are hoping not to get caught. It sounded like a joke, but it was not. He was teaching me to understand who held power in a room. I use that skill in every negotiation and every client meeting to this day. Our relationship was not perfect, but it was honest. He was not the kind of man who said I love you every day. He showed it through actions. When I needed a new suit for my first job interview, he drove 3 hours to take me to the best store he knew. When I bought my first car, he spent a weekend teaching me how to change the oil and rotate the tires. When I told him I wanted to be a stockbroker, he bought me a subscription to the Wall Street Journal and read the business section with me every Sunday morning. I went to a state school, studied finance, and graduated with honors. My first job was at a small brokerage firm in the city. I started on the cold calling desk, making 100 calls a day. Most people hung up on me. Some yelled at me. A few listened. I learned to take the rejection and move to the next call. My father taught me that. You keep going. I remember one call from those early months. A man named Frank. He owned a small printing shop. He listened to my pitch for about 30 seconds, then said, "Son, I have been in business for 30 years. What makes you think you have anything to offer me?" I did not have a good answer. I stammered through something about diversification and risk management, and he laughed and hung up. I sat at my desk with the deadline in my hand, my face hot. Then I called the next number on my list. 6 months later, I called Frank again. He did not remember me, but I remembered him. This time I had done my homework. I knew his revenue range, his employee count, his likely needs. I told him specifically what I could do for his business. He paused. "You did your research this time." He gave me a small account. He stayed with me for 5 years. When he retired, he wrote me a letter thanking me for taking care of his savings. I still have that letter. There was also a woman named Doris. She owned a chain of laundromats and trusted no one in my industry. She had been burned by a bad broker before. I sent her handwritten notes with market insights for 3 months. No calls. No pitches. Just useful information. Eventually she called me. "You are persistent," she said. "I like that." She gave me a small account to manage. Over time, she trusted me with more. She taught me that patience can be just as powerful as persuasion. Over time, I built a client base and moved up. From the cold calling desk to a cubicle. From the cubicle to a small office with a window. From the window office to a corner office on the 15th floor. I was not rich, but I was comfortable. I had a modest apartment in a decent neighborhood with a view of the river. I drove a reliable sedan. I saved what I could and invested the rest. My father taught me that money was a tool, not a goal. I never forgot that lesson. My mother died when I was 19. A heart attack. Sudden. Unexpected. I was in my dorm room when my father called. I remember the sound of his voice. Flat. Hollow. Like someone had reached inside him and pulled out everything that mattered. "Come home, son." I remember the drive home like a series of photographs burned into my memory. The gray highway stretching ahead of me, endless and empty. The rain that started an hour into the trip, fat drops hitting the windshield, the wipers dragging across the glass. The gas station where I stopped and realized I had left my wallet in my dorm room. I found $20 crumpled in the glove compartment and used it to fill the tank. The coffee I bought was burnt and bitter, but I drank it anyway because I needed something warm in my hands. The radio stations I cycled through one by one, none of them sounding right, until I turned it off and drove the rest of the way in silence. The last 20 miles were the worst. Every landmark was a memory. The diner where we had eaten after my high school graduation. The church where I had been baptized. The exit for the hospital where they had taken her. I passed it without slowing down. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked the same. The porch light was on. The flower beds my mother had planted lined the walkway. But the windows were dark and the curtains were drawn. It looked like a house that already knew it was empty. I drove home that night. The funeral was 3 days later. I stood beside my father at the grave and watched them lower her into the ground. He did not cry at the service. He cried that night, alone in his room, when he thought I could not hear him. The funeral was at the church I had grown up in. The same wooden pews where I had squirmed through Sunday sermons were filled with people I had not seen in years. Relatives I barely recognized. My mother's co-workers from the hospital where she had worked as a receptionist. Neighbors who brought casseroles and said all the right things. I shook hands and accepted hugs and thanked everyone for coming. I do not remember most of it. The day is a blur of black clothes and murmured condolences and too many flowers, their sweetness filling the church and turning my stomach. After the last guest left, the house was unbearable. Every room held her. The kitchen where she made pancakes on Sunday mornings, the smell of butter and maple syrup still somehow hanging in the air. The living room where she fell asleep reading on the couch, a book still face down on the end table. The closet where her coat still hung, her perfume still faint on the collar of her favorite jacket. My father moved through the rooms like a ghost, touching things without picking them up. I found him that night in their bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed, holding a photograph of her. It was the only time I saw him break. He never fully recovered. He threw himself into his work, filling the emptiness with long hours and business trips. I went back to college and tried to build my own life. We grew apart in our grief, not because we did not love each other, but because neither of us knew how to talk about the loss. Every phone call was surface level. "How are you?" "Fine." "How is work?" "Good." The real conversations never happened. 3 years later, Patricia walked into his life. She was 45, divorced with a 12-year-old daughter named Janie. She was stunning, the kind of woman who turned heads when she walked into a room. My father was 55, recently widowed, and lonely. Within 6 months, they were engaged. My father called to tell me the news. I was at my desk reviewing a client portfolio. "Leo, I have something to tell you." "What is it, Dad?" "I asked Patricia to marry me. She said yes." I set down my pen. "Dad, that is fast. You have only known her for 6 months." "I know. But when you know, you know. She is 20 years younger than you." I am aware of her age, Leo. She has been divorced twice. I am aware of that too. Then why? Why rush into this? He paused. Because I am tired of being alone, son. Because she makes me feel like there is still life left in me. Because I wake up in the morning and look forward to the day. I wanted to argue. I wanted to list all the reasons this was a bad idea. But he sounded happier than I had heard him in years. What was I supposed to say? Do not be happy? Stay lonely? If she makes you happy, Dad, then I am happy for you. Thank you, Leo. That means a lot. I hung up and stared at my computer screen. Something felt wrong, but I could not name it. She was too young, too polished, too perfect. Maybe I was being unfair. Maybe I was judging her because she was not my mother. I told myself to give her a chance. I flew home for the wedding. It was a small ceremony at a hotel ballroom. Patricia wore a white dress that probably cost more than my first car. Janie stood beside her in a matching dress, looking bored. My father smiled through the entire thing. He looked happier than I had ever seen him. I was the best man. I gave a short toast. I shook hands with Patricia's relatives, none of whom I would ever see again. I made small talk with her friends, none of whom I would remember. I danced one dance with Patricia because it was expected. She was warm and charming and said all the right things. The next morning I flew back home. I had a client meeting on Monday and a portfolio review that needed my attention. My life was 600 miles away from my father's house. The years that followed settled into a pattern. I called my father every Sunday evening. We talked for 20 or 30 minutes. He told me about his week. I told him about mine. He mentioned Patricia in passing. She was redecorating the living room. She was planning a trip to New York. She was hosting a dinner party for his business associates. Nothing alarming. Nothing that made me worry. I saw them on holidays. Thanksgiving. Christmas. A long weekend in the summer. I would fly in on Thursday and leave on Sunday. Patricia was always perfectly dressed and perfectly polite. She asked about my job and my apartment and my love life. Janie was quiet, usually on her phone, occasionally muttering a response when spoken to. Everything seemed normal. The house looked the same. My father looked healthy. Patricia seemed like a normal wife. I had no reason to look deeper. I did not look deeper. I was too busy with my own life. My life in the city was simple but full. I woke up at 5:30 every morning and went for a run along the river. The path was 3 miles long, lined with trees and street lamps. I knew every turn, every bench, every crack in the pavement. I ran no matter the weather. Rain, snow, humidity. It did not matter. The run was the only time my mind was completely quiet. I was at my desk by 7. I read the overnight markets, reviewed my positions, and prepared for the opening bell. My office was on the 15th floor with a window that faced east. I watched the sun rise over the city most mornings. It never got old. My days were a rotation of client meetings, portfolio reviews, and market analysis. I managed money for about 60 clients. Retirees who needed steady income. Young professionals who wanted growth. Small business owners who were saving for something bigger. I liked the work. I liked the math of it. I liked the relationships. I ate lunch at my desk most days. A sandwich from the deli downstairs. An apple. A bottle of water. I did not need much. I left the office around 6. Some nights I met Richie for a drink. Some nights I went to the gym. Some nights I just went home, ordered takeout and watched a movie. It was not a glamorous life, but it was mine. I had built it myself. I was proud of it. I dated now and then, a few women over the years. A paralegal I met at a networking event. A teacher I matched with on an app. A graphic designer who lived in my building. None of them lasted more than a few months. Timing never lined up. Priorities were different. We wanted different things. No hard feelings on either side. I was not looking for a wife, and I was honest about that. Richie was my best friend. We met in high school when he sat next to me in chemistry class. We bonded over bad grades and a shared love of basketball. He became a history teacher, married a woman named Sarah, and had 2 kids. He lived in the suburbs with a mortgage and a minivan. I lived in the city with a view of the skyline. We were different people with different lives, but we talked every week and got together for a drink whenever we could. Then the cancer was discovered. It was stage 4 by the time they found it. It had spread to his liver, his lungs, his bones. The doctors gave him 6 months, maybe 8. He took the news with the same calm he had taken everything else in his life. He nodded, asked a few questions about treatment options, and went home. My father called me on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in a meeting when my phone buzzed. I ignored it. He never called during the day. When the meeting ended, I called him back. Leo. Hey, Dad. Everything okay? I have cancer, son. The words did not make sense at first. He was healthy. He was strong. He had never been sick a day in his life. What kind of cancer? Pancreatic. Stage 4. It has spread. When did you find out? Last week. And you are just telling me now? I needed time to process it. I did not want to tell you until I knew what I was dealing with. What are the doctors saying? 6 months. Maybe 8 if the treatment works. Then we fight it. We find the best doctors. We throw everything at it. Leo. What? It is too late for that. It has spread too far. The treatment is not going to cure me. It is just going to buy me time. I sat down. The air went out of the room. I am coming home. You do not have to. I am coming home, Dad. I hung up and booked the first flight. I told my boss I did not know when I would be back. He told me to take whatever time I needed. I packed a bag, called Richie, and asked him to water my plants and grab my mail. The flight was 3 hours. I spent the whole time staring out the window, trying to prepare myself for what I would see. I was not prepared. When I walked through the door, I barely recognized him. He had lost 30 pounds. His clothes hung off his frame. His skin had a yellow tint from the liver involvement. But his eyes were still sharp. He was sitting in his leather chair in the study, the same chair he had sat in my entire life. Hello, son. Hey, Dad. I sat down across from him. You look terrible. He laughed. I feel terrible, but that is what cancer does. We talked for hours that first night. About work. About the market. About old memories. He asked about my clients and my portfolio. I told him about a big win I had on a tech stock. He smiled. He always loved hearing about my wins. He asked about Richie and Sarah and the kids. He asked if I was dating anyone. I told him about the graphic designer who lived in my building. It had ended 2 months ago. No drama. Just fizzled out. You will find someone, he said. Maybe. I am not in a rush. Good. Do not rush. The right one will come when you are ready. He did not mention Patricia much. I figured she was just not part of the conversation. I did not realize he was waiting for the right moment. I stayed at the house for the next month. I worked remotely, checking the markets from my laptop in the mornings and taking client calls on my cell phone. The afternoons and evenings I spent with my father. We watched old movies. We looked through photo albums. We talked about my mother. He told me stories about their early years together, before I was born. I had never heard most of them. One afternoon, we watched an old movie from the 40s. It had been my mother's favorite. Halfway through, he reached over and took my hand. He did not say anything. He just held it for the rest of the film. When the credits rolled, he said, "She loved this one. She made me watch it with her at least a dozen times." He smiled. I pretended to hate it, but I did not. I just liked watching her enjoy it. He was quiet for a moment. I should have told her that. Another day, he asked me to bring down the boxes from the attic. We spent hours going through old photo albums. Pictures from their wedding, my mother young and radiant in a white dress. Pictures of me as a baby in her arms. Pictures from family vacations at the lake. My father grinning in a ridiculous hat. My mother laughing with her head thrown back. He told me stories behind every photograph. The time she fell out of a canoe and he had to jump in after her, still holding his beer above the water. The time I got lost at a state fair and was found eating cotton candy with a stranger. He laughed more that afternoon than I had heard him laugh in months. He talked about her with a tenderness that made my chest ache. He told me about the first time he saw her, at a diner where she was working as a waitress. He ordered coffee and stayed for 3 hours, just watching her move through the room. He asked her out 4 times before she said yes. I knew she was the one, he said. I knew it the same way I knew I wanted to start my own company. Some things you just know, and that was one of them. On the last night he was strong enough to sit up. He looked at me from his chair and said, "Promise me something, Leo. Do not wait until it is too late to tell people how you feel." I waited. I thought there would always be more time. There is not. Patricia was around, but we did not interact much. She made meals. She handled visitors. She took calls from friends. We were polite to each other, but there was a distance between us that neither of us tried to close. I told myself it was the stress of the situation. I did not think much of it. A month before he died, he called me into his study. The room smelled of old books and whiskey. He was sitting in his leather chair, thinner than I had ever seen him, but his eyes were still sharp. "Sit down, Leo," he said. "We need to talk." I sat. He poured 2 glasses of bourbon and pushed one toward me. It was the same brand he had been drinking for as long as I could remember. "I have had Mr. Wilder draft my will," he said. "You are getting everything. The house, the company shares, the investments. Everything." I blinked. "Dad, I do not need your money. I know you do not. That is not the point. The point is that I built this for our family, and I want to make sure it stays in our family." He took a sip of his bourbon. "Patricia is getting $10,000. I stared at him. 10,000? Dad, you have been married to her for 10 years. I know exactly how long I have been married to her, Leo, and I know exactly how much she has spent in those 10 years. 10,000 is more than she deserves. I do not understand. You married her. You lived with her. You seemed happy." He looked at me with tired eyes. "I was not happy, Leo. I was lonely. There is a difference. I married her because I did not want to be alone. I stayed with her because it was easier than leaving. And I let her spend my money because I did not have the fight left in me. But she is your wife. She took care of you. She took care of my wallet, Leo. She took care of my credit card. She took care of my checkbook. But she did not take care of me. Not the way your mother did. Not the way you would have if I had let you." The words landed hard, because somewhere in the back of my mind, I had always known something was off. That feeling I could never name. That nagging sense that the marriage was not what it appeared to be. "She is going to fight this," he said. "She is going to claim I was not in my right mind. She is going to claim you manipulated me. She is going to say whatever she needs to say. What do I do? You defend my wishes. You stand your ground. And you do not let her guilt you into giving her what she does not deserve. I do not know if I can do this, Dad. I was not here. I do not know what really happened in this house. I know, and that is going to make it harder. But you do not need to know the details. You just need to know that I made this decision carefully, that I was of sound mind, that no one influenced me." He leaned forward. "I am sorry I put you in this position. I should have ended this years ago. But I was tired and she was there. It was my mistake, and now you have to clean it up. That is not fair to you, but it is the truth." I took his hand. "I will handle it, Dad. I know you will. That is why I am leaving everything to you." We talked until the bourbon was gone. He told me about his business and his investments. He told me about a deal he had almost made in 2008 that would have doubled his net worth. He told me about a mistake he made in 2012 that cost him $500,000. He told me everything he had never told me before, because he was running out of time. He told me he was proud of me. He told me he loved me. He said all the things he had never been good at saying. He died a month later. I was holding his hand. His breathing slowed, then stopped. The room was quiet. I sat there for a long time after he was gone, still holding his hand, not wanting to let go. The funeral was a lavish affair. Patricia insisted on it. She wore a black designer dress and cried on cue. Janie stood beside her in an expensive black outfit, scrolling through her phone during the eulogy. I stood at the grave and watched them lower my father into the ground. I did not cry. I had done all my crying in that study. After the service, an older man approached me. He had a weathered face and kind eyes. He was wearing a suit that did not quite fit him, like he had borrowed it for the occasion. "You must be Leo," he said. "I am. I worked for your father for 30 years. Started as a driver, ended as a warehouse manager. He was the best boss I ever had." "Thank you." He talked about you all the time. Every Christmas party, every company picnic. He would tell anyone who would listen about his son, the stockbroker. I did not know what to say. "He told me once that you were the only thing he ever did right. I wanted you to know that before I go." He shook my hand and walked away. The will reading was scheduled for the following week at Mr. Wilder's office. I flew back to the city for 2 days to check on my clients and pack a proper bag, then flew back. My boss was understanding, but I could feel the strain. My clients were patient, but I had missed 2 earnings seasons and my attention was divided. Mr. Wilder was a man in his late 60s, silver-haired, with wire rim glasses and the calm demeanor of someone who had seen every kind of family drama. His office smelled like old books and furniture polish. He shook my hand and offered me coffee. The door opened and Patricia walked in. She was wearing a red dress that was too tight for a legal proceeding. Janie followed in designer jeans and an expensive top. "Leo," Patricia said, her voice dripping with false warmth. "How are you holding up?" "I am fine, Patricia. We are all family here. We need to stick together." I said nothing. Mr. Wilder invited us to sit. He opened a leather folder and began reading. The legal language continued for several minutes. Then the numbers. "To my wife, Patricia Nash, I leave the sum of $10,000. The silence was absolute. Patricia's face went pale, then red. "I am sorry. I must have misheard you. Your husband left you $10,000, Mr. Wilder said. "That cannot be right. There must be a mistake. 10 years. I was his wife for 10 years. The will is clear, Mrs. Nash." "And the rest?" Janie asked. "Where does the rest go?" "Everything else goes to Leo Nash, the testator's son." Janie stood up. "That is not fair. He cannot do that." "He did," Mr. Wilder said. "And the will is legally sound. I witnessed his signature. He was of sound mind. We have medical evaluations from 3 doctors confirming his mental competence during the relevant period." Patricia turned to me. Her eyes were wild. "You did this. You manipulated him." "I did nothing. This was his decision." "Liar. You poisoned his mind against me." "Patricia, I did not even know about the will until a month before he died. He told me himself. It was his choice alone." "You expect me to believe that?" "I do not expect you to believe anything. I am just telling you the truth." She stood up and pointed a finger at me. "This is not over. I will fight this. I will take you to court. I will burn through every dollar I have to prove this will is invalid." "That would be unfortunate," Mr. Wilder said, "since you would be using your own money. You are not entitled to any of the estate's funds for litigation." She stared at him, then at me. Then she grabbed her purse and stormed out. Janie followed, giving me a look of pure hatred. The door closed. Mr. Wilder let out a long breath. "That went about as well as I expected. What are my options?" "We wait. She will file a challenge. It will be ugly, but I am confident the will hold. Your father was careful. He had medical records. He had witnesses. He even made a video recording of himself explaining his decisions." "A video?" "He sat in front of a camera and read a statement. He explained why he was leaving Patricia $10,000 and why he was leaving everything else to you. He said he was of sound mind, that no one had influenced him, and that this was his free and voluntary decision." I sat back. My father had thought of everything. "There is one more thing," Mr. Wilder said. "He left you a letter." He handed me a sealed envelope. My name was written on the front in my father's handwriting. I recognized it immediately. I did not open it there. I waited until I was back in my apartment, sitting at my kitchen table with the city lights glowing outside my window. Leo, if you are reading this, I am gone. I want you to know that I am proud of you. I have always been proud of you. You are the best thing I ever did. Patricia will fight. She will say terrible things about you. Do not let her. Stay calm. Stay honest. Trust Mr. Wilder. He is a good man. And remember, you are not responsible for her choices. You are only responsible for yours. I love you, son. Always have. Always will. Dad. I read the letter until I had memorized every word. I folded it carefully and put it in my wallet. I still carry it with me every day. The lawsuit came 2 weeks later. Patricia hired a high-profile attorney and filed a challenge, claiming my father was not of sound mind and that I had exerted undue influence over him. The local news picked it up. Widow challenges will, says stepson manipulated dying father. I became the villain of a story I had never wanted to be part of. I was at my desk when the story broke. A client called and asked if I had seen the news. I pulled it up on my browser. There was my father's name. There was my name. There was Patricia's name, listed as the victim. My phone started ringing. My email filled with messages from people I had not talked to in years. I closed my laptop and sat in the silence of my office. The 15th floor had never felt so small. Richie called that afternoon. Dude, are you okay? I have been better. Want to get a drink? Yes. We met at O'Malley's, the same bar we had been going to since we were both old enough to drink. Same wooden booths. Same neon signs. Same bartender who had been working there for 15 years. This is insane, Richie said, sliding the article across the table. They are making you sound like a criminal. The truth does not matter. Drama sells. How are you holding up? I am tired, Richie. My father has been dead for 2 months and I am already being dragged through court. And the worst part is, I never even liked her. I told myself I was being unfair. I told myself to give her a chance. But I was right about her from the start. You had a gut feeling. And I ignored it. For 10 years, I ignored it because I did not want to cause trouble. You were trying to be a good son. And now I have a lawsuit and a news story and a reputation that is going to take years to fix. Richie shook his head. Your father made his choice. He knew exactly what he was doing. He planned for this. He made a video. He got medical records. He set it up so she could not touch you. I know. Then trust him. Trust that he knew what he was doing. And fight the fight he asked you to fight. She is going to lose, Richie said. Your father was sharp until the end. Everyone who knew him will testify to that. The news does not care about the truth. Cares about the story. Then give them the right story. I looked at him. What do you mean? Stop hiding. Talk to the reporters. Tell them about your father. About what he built. About who he was. Fight back. I do not want to fight back. I want to be left alone. I know. But that is not an option anymore. He was right. It was not an option. The weeks before the trial were the hardest. I tried to keep working, but my focus was gone. I sat at my desk and stared at the screens without seeing them. I made a mistake on a trade and lost a client $800. I covered the loss out of my own pocket. My boss pulled me aside and asked if I needed time off. I took it. I spent my mornings running along the river. The path I had run 1,000 times before. The same trees, the same benches, the same cracks in the pavement. The rhythm of my feet was the only thing that quieted my mind. I spent my afternoons meeting with Mr. Wilder. We went through the evidence again and again. The medical records, the video, the witness statements. Every time it came back to the same thing. My father had been careful. My father had been prepared. My father had known this day would come. I spent my evenings alone in my apartment. I ordered takeout and ate it in front of the television without tasting it. I read my father's letter. I called Richie. I went to sleep and woke up and did it all again. Richie joined me on my runs sometimes. He would bike alongside me, pedaling slowly to match my pace. You know you do not have to do this alone, he said one morning. I know. Then why are you? Because I do not know how to let people help me. You are not going to lose this case. Your father made sure of that. And if I win, she will appeal. She will drag this on for years. Then you deal with it. One day at a time. I met with Mr. Wilder in his office. He poured 2 cups of coffee and spread the case file across his desk. What is their argument exactly? I asked. Undue influence and lack of testamentary capacity. They claim your father was not mentally competent and that you used your position as his son to manipulate him. That is absurd. He was sharp until the end. I know, and we have the medical records to prove it. 3 doctors evaluated him during his final months. All 3 confirmed he was of sound mind. What about the undue influence claim? Harder to prove, harder to defend against. But your father made that video. He explicitly states that no one influenced him. That will be difficult for them to overcome. What is your honest assessment? We will win, but it will be expensive, time-consuming, and emotionally draining. Patricia has nothing left to lose. She will fight until the end. Then let us get started. While I prepared for trial, Patricia and Janie were falling apart. They sat in Patricia's living room, surrounded by furniture she could not afford to keep. The house was still technically hers to live in until the estate was settled, but everyone knew it was temporary. Leo would own it soon enough. This is your fault, Janie said. She was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through her phone. You were supposed to secure our future. That was the whole point of marrying him. I tried. He would not listen. You did not try hard enough. You should have charmed him. You should have manipulated him. That was your job. Patricia stared at her daughter. My job? Yes, you married him for his money. I thought that was the arrangement, but you could not even close the deal. I gave him 10 years of my life, and you got $10,000 for it. Congratulations. That is less than I spend on a handbag. Patricia walked to the window. You do not understand how hard it was. I understand perfectly. You had one job. Get the money. Keep the money. And you failed. He was not easy to control. He had his own ideas. Then you should have been smarter about it. You should have found a way. Janie set down her phone and looked at her mother. What are we going to do now? I have no money. I have no job. I have no intention of working for a living. That is not the life I signed up for. The lawsuit will fix this. The lawsuit is going to lose. Even I know that. And I did not even bother to finish college. Then what do you want me to do? Janie stood up. Figure it out. Find a new husband. Win the lawsuit. Do something. But do not expect me to start working at some retail store like a common person. That is not happening. She grabbed her purse and walked toward the door. Where are you going? Out. To see some friends. People who still have money. She left without looking back. Patricia sat alone in the living room, surrounded by furniture she could not keep. The trial began on a Monday morning. I wore my best suit, the one my father had helped me pick out for my first job interview. I met Mr. Wilder outside the courthouse. The steps were crowded with reporters. Cameras flashed. Someone shouted my name. Nervous? Mr. Wilder asked. A little. Do not be. The evidence is on our side. Let me handle the arguments. You just need to be yourself on the stand. The courtroom was small but packed. Patricia sat at the plaintiff's table in a black suit. Janie sat behind her, arms crossed, expression blank. Judge Milton Fredericks presided. He was an older man with a stern face and reading glasses that sat low on his nose. He had been a probate judge for 20 years. He had seen every kind of will challenge. Patricia's attorney made his opening argument. He painted a picture of a vulnerable old man, weakened by cancer, manipulated by a greedy son who had isolated him from his loving wife. He claimed I had poisoned my father's mind and taken advantage of his illness. Then Mr. Wilder stood. Your Honor, the evidence speaks for itself. George Nash was of sound mind when he drafted his will. 3 doctors confirmed his mental competence. He made a video recording explaining his decisions. and he personally informed his son of the will's contents 1 month before his death. A conversation in which his son tried to convince him to leave more to his wife. The judge nodded. Proceed. Patricia took the stand first. She cried. She described my father as confused and forgetful. She painted herself as a devoted wife who had been betrayed by a scheming stepson. Mr. Wilder cross-examined her calmly. Mrs. Nash, you claim your husband was confused. Can you give a specific example? He forgot appointments. Did he ever forget who you were? No. Did he ever forget who Leo was? No. Did he ever get lost in his own home? No. Did he ever fail to recognize friends or family? No. Did he ever fail to recognize where he was? No. So when you say he was confused, you mean he occasionally forgot appointments? Yes. Thank you. No further questions. Her sister took the stand next. She said my father had seemed forgetful at a family dinner. Under cross-examination, she admitted she had only seen him twice in the past year, and that both times he had remembered her name, her husband's name, and her children's names. The hairdresser testified. She said he seemed disoriented during his last haircut. She admitted she was not a medical professional and had only spoken to him for about 10 minutes. The neighbor testified. He said my father had seemed confused once when he could not find his car keys. Under cross-examination, he admitted my father had then corrected him on a factual error about local property values, which suggested his mind was perfectly sharp. A cousin of Patricia's took the stand next. She claimed my father had seemed withdrawn and confused at a family barbecue the previous summer. Mr. Wilder rose slowly. What do you do for a living? He asked. I am a dental hygienist. Are you qualified to diagnose cognitive impairment? She hesitated. No. Then on what basis are you offering this opinion? She had no answer. She glanced at Patricia, then looked down at her hands. The jury watched her in silence. Patricia's former financial advisor testified that my father had made some unusual investment decisions in his final year. Mr. Wilder approached the witness stand with a stack of papers. He produced bank statements showing the advisor had charged excessive fees on Patricia's personal accounts for years. Were you hoping Mr. Nash's estate would continue paying those fees? Mr. Wilder asked. Patricia's attorney objected. The judge sustained it, but the jury had already seen the documents. Witness by witness, the case crumbled. Mr. Wilder presented our evidence. Medical records from 3 doctors. The video recording which the judge allowed the jury to watch in full. Testimony from the hospice nurse, Margaret, who had cared for my father daily in his final weeks. In your professional opinion, was George Nash of sound mind? Mr. Wilder asked. Absolutely. He was physically weak but mentally sharp. He discussed his finances with me. He gave detailed instructions about his care. He was alert and oriented until the very end. Did you ever observe any signs of confusion? None. Did you ever observe any undue influence? No. His son visited often. They had normal conversations. There was no pressure, no manipulation, no isolation. The son was supportive and respectful. Patricia's attorney declined to cross-examine. There was nothing to challenge. Then I took the stand. Mr. Wilder walked me through my testimony. What did your father tell you about his will? He told me he was leaving me everything. The house, the company, the investments. Everything. Did he tell you what he was leaving his wife? $10,000. What was your reaction? I was surprised. I told him I did not need his money. I told him $10,000 seemed low for a 10-year marriage. Did you ask him to change it? No. It was his decision. I respected it. Did you influence his decision in any way? No. I did not even know about the will until he told me. Patricia's attorney cross-examined me for an hour. He tried to trip me up. He tried to make me contradict myself. He asked the same questions in different ways, hoping I would slip. I did not slip, because I was telling the truth. The trial lasted 4 days. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Has the jury reached a verdict? Judge Fredericks asked. We have, Your Honor. Please read the verdict. In the matter of the estate of George Nash, we find that the decedent was of sound mind when he executed his will, that there was no undue influence, and that the will is valid in its entirety. Patricia's face crumpled. Janie stared straight ahead, expressionless. Mr. Wilder put a hand on my shoulder. Congratulations. I looked across the courtroom at Patricia. She was crying. Real tears, but not tears of grief. Tears of defeat. The judge ordered her to pay her own legal fees. She walked out of the courtroom with $10,000 and a mountain of debt. Outside, reporters swarmed. I kept my head down and walked to my car. I drove home in silence. When I got to my apartment, I sat on the couch and did not move for 2 hours. 6 months later, Mr. Wilder called. Leo, I thought you should know what happened to Patricia. What happened? She lost everything. The legal fees ate through her $10,000 and whatever savings she had left. She moved out of the house last month. Found a small apartment on the other side of town. Janie cut off contact. She is working at a department store now, folding shirts for $12 an hour. I did not know how to feel about that. There is more. Janie was arrested. Fraud. She tried to open credit cards in your father's name after he died. She used his social security number and his date of birth. She was caught using one of the cards at a luxury store. How much time is she looking at? 2 to 3 years. She had a juvenile record for similar crimes. Identity theft. Credit card fraud. She has been doing this for years. Does Patricia know? She knows. She bailed her out. But she cannot afford a good lawyer. Janie will take a plea deal. I hung up and sat in my apartment, staring at the city lights. Richie called that night. I heard about Janie. You okay? I am fine. It is just strange. She was part of my life for 10 years. Not a big part, but she was there. And now she is going to prison. She made her choices. I know. What about Patricia? Working retail. Alone. Do you feel bad for her? I thought about it. Part of me does. She made terrible choices and now she is paying for them. That does not make me happy. It just makes me sad. That is called having a conscience. A few weeks later, I received a letter. The return address was Patricia's new apartment. I opened it standing in my kitchen. Leo, I know you have no reason to forgive me. I know I made your life miserable. I know I dragged your name through the mud. But I wanted you to know that I am sorry. Not because I lost. Not because I have nothing left. But because I wasted 10 years of my life chasing something that was never real. Your father was a good man. He deserved better than me. And you deserved better than a stepmother who only saw you as an obstacle. I am not asking for forgiveness. I am not asking for money. I just want you to know that I finally understand what I did. I saw Janie last week. In prison. She looks terrible. She blames me for everything. Maybe she is right. I raised her to be entitled. I taught her that money was the most important thing. And now she is paying the price. I hope you are doing well. Leo, you deserve it. Patricia. I read the letter 3 times. Then I put it in my desk drawer, next to my father's letter. I never responded. There was nothing left to say. I went back to work a month after the trial. It was strange at first. Sitting at my desk, watching the ticker, taking client calls. My life had been turned inside out and now I was supposed to act like everything was normal. But eventually the rhythm returned. The markets still opened at 9:30. The clients still needed my advice. The sun still rose over the city every morning. Life moved forward whether I was ready or not. The first week back at the office was disorienting. I sat at my desk and watched the market scroll across my screens, but my mind was still in that courtroom. I caught myself replaying moments from the trial. Patricia's face when the verdict was read. The sound of my own voice on the witness stand. The weight of my father's letter in my suit pocket. I made simple mistakes. Typing the wrong symbol. Misreading a price. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to remind me that I was not fully present. My clients were patient. My boss was understanding. But I felt myself healing in slow increments, like a bone knitting itself back together. The first time I visited my father's grave was 3 months after the trial. A cold afternoon in November. The sky was gray and low. I parked at the edge of the cemetery and walked to his plot. The headstone was simple. Just his name, his dates, and the words "built with his own hands." I stood there for a long time without speaking. The wind moved through the bare branches overhead. The grass was dry and brown, crunching under my shoes. I had brought a flask of his bourbon, the same brand we shared that night in his study. I poured a little on the ground. Then I sat down on the grass and talked. I told him about the trial. I told him I had won. I told him I wished I had not needed to. I told him about Patricia's letter and about Janie. I told him I missed him more than I knew how to say. I talked until my throat was raw and the cold had seeped through my coat. When I finally stood up and walked back to my car, I felt something I had not felt in a long time, a sense of peace. I have been going back every month since. I started volunteering at a nonprofit that teaches financial literacy to young adults. I stand in front of classrooms and teach them about budgeting and saving and investing. I tell them that money is a tool, not a goal. The same lesson my father taught me in the cab of his truck on Saturday mornings. I am still a stockbroker. I still drive the same car. I still live in the same apartment. My father's money is invested, growing quietly, waiting for the day I might need it. But I do not need it now. I never needed it. What I needed was to understand why he did what he did. And now I do. In the end, Patricia got exactly what she deserved. Not revenge. Not punishment. Just the natural consequences of the life she chose. She lost her home. She lost her daughter. She lost everything. Janie got the same. She learned, too late, that you cannot steal your way through life without eventually paying the price. I saw Patricia once, about a year after the trial. I was driving through a shopping center on the outskirts of the city and saw her through a department store window. She was standing at a display table folding shirts. Her hands moved mechanically like she had done it 1,000 times before. She looked older, tired, defeated. I did not stop. I did not wave. I just drove past and let her live the life she had built for herself. I visit my father's grave once a month. I bring a flask of bourbon, the same brand we shared that night in his study. I pour a little on the ground and drink the rest myself. I tell him about my life, about the market, about the weather, about the things I wish I had said when he was alive. And every time I leave, I say the same thing. You were right, Dad. I just wish you had told me sooner. Rest easy. Please like and subscribe to our channel.